sad fact is everyone just missed one of the greatest intros into actually meeting each other for the first time. And I hate when that happens. I always tell myself, just hit record. Don't even worry about it. You can cut it out, because that shit was gold. And it was gold because I'm getting to connect with someone in a different way, who I've seen from afar, who I've learned from afar, who I've admired from afar, and most importantly, in my opinion, just saying, respected from afar. And to get to sit across from people like that for the first time and actually see the person who is on the other side, who is actually who they say they are, walks like, talks like, and acts like, it's just a really uplifting, powerful, positive feeling to have. And like I said to you before, I'm stoked you're on the show, but you said something to me and I'm just kind of sitting in that still. And I'm really happy you're here, man.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I know my schedule's been a bit of a nightmare, but man, I'm happy to be here.
That's okay, dude. Everyone has something and stuff happens. And when you called me the last time, I was really fine with it. And I meant it in the truest sense, because you were out doing exactly what you and I both preach to people on a very deep level, which is taking time for yourself, connecting with nature, being present, and doing the work. And the difference between you saying those things and telling others to do it is seeing you actually do it. So when you're like, hey, I got to postpone, I'm like, good. I'm glad you didn't take time to sit with me. I would rather have you gone out and done what your soul and heart and everything inside of you needed than just force an interview because you said you would do something. I'm so stoked that like this worked out again. So no worries, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was a much needed trip. I get, the creative side of me, which is the part that I really love. I mean, I'm a creative that's a bit masquerading, trying to figure out business and everything else. And to get refilled with the creative side, I need life to go a little bit off the rails. And what I mean by that is more present, right? Like it's less of a Disney ride where I know how today's going to work out. Like even in my regular life and regular routine, like I'm going to a place, I'm accomplishing task, and the next day looks similar.
Right.
They're new task and I am pushing forward, but it's still at the same location, seeing the same faces, doing the same shit. And look, you don't get anywhere without consistency. That's part of the deal. And so occasionally when I need to punch out and take a vacation, me going to sit with my feet up on the beach and try to drink for a week seems horrible. I need to go on an adventure. An adventure to me is kind of into the unknown. And so I need to be on some type of a thing where I don't really know where I'm sleeping that night. I don't know the exact plan. And road trips have always been my favorite. There's a certain flow to a road trip of so different than your regular life. Like I don't have to concern myself where I'm eating or sleeping today. I got that part dialed in, but when I'm on a road trip, that becomes different. And also we're on a motorcycle road trip and we don't really have room for stuff. So it's like, well, I know we're looking for a campsite. We better check to see if there's any food to purchase within an hour of camp instead of driving to camp and then not being able to have dinner. And so I love the waking up in the morning, finding a diner, hopefully have some service, decide which direction I'm going to go that day, see what I find, and then at some point try to figure out which direction I should try to find a place to sleep.
I like it.
That refills me a lot.
Is it, you think, the challenge behind it, the unexpected? Is it the not seeing the same faces, or is it an all-encompassing idea of just throwing yourself into the deep end and seeing if you could swim?
I think there's a part of it for sure that's just pattern interruption, right? That my normal thought patterns are thinking ahead and I'm trying to chase goals and focus on big picture stuff for my business or for my coaching group or branding or any of these other type of things. Whereas when I'm in that mode and my phone's not really working most of the day, my new problems to solve are very different. Like, where are we sleeping? Where are we going to find food? And there is an uneasiness that comes from that, of not knowing, but also I've managed to sleep and find food every night of the rest of my life. So I imagine I'll probably figure it out today.
Right. And also it's not like you're going to disappear if you go one night.
I could probably manage. I think I'm not running that lean.
You're not, I don't know, man. You're pretty damn tiny.
I'm not a meal away from starvation. I promise you.
Nah, we'll give you a solid week.
We laugh this all the time. Like I have no idea what's going to kill me.
Right.
Starvation is real low on the list.
It's not the one that's going to be the thing.
There's a very few timelines in the infinite where starvation's what got me.
Like a bear will enjoy you for a hot minute before he moves
way
on.
better chance. There's a better chance of a parachute not opening.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's intense. That's okay, though. I think when you approach challenges with the mindset that it's all right, I'll be okay, you're always going to figure it out. It's the people that walk into situations like that, or they won't even walk into situations like that. Those are the type of people that I find such a value when they listen to people like you, because they hear that it's okay to throw yourself in the deep end. It's okay to do these things and not have it all figured out. I think a lot of times people look at people like you, and I'm going to very loosely group myself in with you, very loosely, but kind
I'll go
of.
with that. I'm into it.
Cool. And I think what happens is they look at anybody in this space that's trying to do anything, change anything, grow businesses, be podcasters, do everything all at once. And they go, well, they have to have it all figured out. There has to be a map. There has to be an answer, or they wouldn't be able to be so successful at it. And I think showing them the other side of things, showing them that you can not have the answers, not have the path, but you have to take action to find the path. Hey humans, I know you've all been seeing me drink HVMN's Ketone IQ lately. This is a game changer. Jet fuel in a bottle. I use Ketone IQ for everything in my life, whether it's running, cycling, podcasting, or just the extra boost that my brain needs. I won't lie, it helps push me to the next level in all things. I love Ketone IQ and what HVMN stands for. Go grab some shots today at hvmn.com and use the code BRASS20 and save. That's the difference.
So the way I kind of look at that, right, and where I made the shift in my life was how many things I had set a limitation on or blocked myself from doing because I had already figured out some preconceived expectation about. The more of those things I've tried, the more I realize I'm wrong most of the time. And so instead of now having any expectation about a thing, I have an intention of what I'd like to accomplish. And then that leaves the back end open-ended. I know the direction I'm going, but I don't necessarily care about the destination.
Right.
Whereas if I'm focused on destination and how I know this is supposed to go, this is what a trip's supposed to be, made up on what, man? Like if it's not made up on experience, it's an opinion. And the experience says I'll figure it out. You know?
Yeah. I think we have this idea that you can't have intention or expectation or these things. And I think when you're working with anyone who's trying to change their life, trying to improve their life, trying to find a path to their life, or down the road, and now they're trying to really enhance their life, I think a lot of times when talking about expectation, it can become overwhelming very quickly, and it sets people up to fail. And I like the way that you discuss how you look at things, because having an expectation, if somebody doesn't get it met, will mean that they failed at it. They did something wrong. But instead you look at preparation from an intention standpoint. And I'd love to talk to you about intention with you, because intention is so important in every aspect of life, but it seems to be one of the most overlooked aspects of planning your life. How did that come to you? When did intention start to become an important factor? And how did you bring it out in yourself?
So as an athlete with the background of doing the Highland Games and getting better at sport, right? Like that's probably the first thing that clicks into place for me. You know, same with track and field before that, but athletics in general. This is where the first place I understood that the energy and effort I put toward a thing, I got reward and response back from it. And so with those sports, right, like the destination would be how far I throw. The intention is to be the best thrower I can possibly be. And so if I'm following that intention, that keeps me giving a shit about training, caring about recovery, learning as much as I can to better myself, to be the best athlete I can possibly be, instead of letting my value as an athlete depend on where I place. because that's a lot of things that are out of my control. Because there can just be freaks that show up that, look, man, that's just how it works. You lose sometimes.
Hmm.
And none of that has anything to do with me. What has to do with me and how I value it is, was I outworked? You know, what were my intentions of getting into this sport, and were they met? You know, as my sport came to an end, you know, none of this works real chronologically, but we all get there anyway.
Yeah, but that's boring. I'm not looking for
Time's made
chronological.
up anyway.
Exactly. Oh, we're on the same page.
So, as my sport came to an end at the end of 2016, due to I had a nagging knee that needed to have an ACL surgery. I went in and did it, and it didn't go quite as planned. So I ended up with 8 follow-up surgeries and a total knee replacement at 36. So the last time I competed would have been in 2016, and I took second in the world, and then was pretty quickly tossed out of that. You know, my expectations of this sport, you know, at this point I've won 2 world championships and I'm one of the top guys in the world. You know, the idea of retiring from the sport hasn't really poked its head onto the map yet. And I also have an idea of, like, you know, when you retire, I'll get to leave my shoes out there the way people have, and have this moment and kind of walk off. And, you know, the older I'm getting, you know, do I want to compete as a Masters? I have all these things I'm thinking of. And truth is, it just fucking disappeared, man. I don't, you know, the last time I competed, I didn't know that was the last time it was going to be. And so being bitter on the back end of it, of a few things I didn't accomplish, X, Y, and Z, and those type of things. Yeah, I could feel trapped in that mindset of, like, bitterness and not quite regret, but just, yeah, how dare things work out this way? And as things pivoted and I found a better perspective on it, it was, you know, to switching to gratitude and abundance, and realizing, you know, the intention I had of getting into sport was to see how absolutely far I could throw. I found out before the clock struck whatever time it was, an injury showed up or whatever it was. And if I'm really honest with myself, man, I'm not walking off the field healthy anyway. Like, I wouldn't have left while things were great, like an adult, mature person. No, I would have burned it down anyway. So, done lying to myself about that piece of it.
Yeah.
But I figured out, you know, I found that intention. The intention was to be the best I could be. And so kind of getting to look through that more and more in my life and where it applies, I got really focused once I got hurt on time and how things end and chapters end, and you don't know when they're gonna, and how to make the most of life. My father had passed away in 2014 due to pancreatic cancer, and it was like an 11-month fight from we got the information till he's dead. Jesus. And he passed away at 62, the day before my 31st birthday. And so, kind of getting to check in on that, I figured out a few things. One is that no matter what I do, there's a chance that's how it ends. That the way my life ends is I get sick, I shrivel up and fucking die, and there's nothing I get to do about it. And I get to spend some part of that, not just sick and dying, right? Because, you know, that's the machine failing. You know, that's my body failing. And your brain's all right in there. You're just trapped, which scares the shit out of me. I got a little taste of it being hurt. And then the other side of that is the mind going, and that's worse to me. And so the way I looked at the other side of that was, if that's the way there's a chance this whole thing's ending, I'm going to damn sure make the ride worth it. And so looking at that and looking at what time is that's the only scarce commodity I've really got. You know, I can buy other bullshit, but time, man, it's X-1 every day. And so looking at that 31 years, and if that's the case, that I'm halfway through my life of what my father's lifespan was, 1,612 weeks.
What are you counting?
At 31, Yeah, I'm 40. That's 1,133 weeks as of Monday.
Oof.
I got a jar of marbles that I filled up and keep 1,612 marbles in when it started. And every Monday I pull one out and I take a minute and I reflect on it, do a little journaling and take a look. And really the questions I have are, did I spend this doing things I'm passionate about, I'm interested in, I'm curious about, I want to learn and serving, being the best version of myself? Or were they spent out of obligation doing a bunch of stuff I feel lukewarm on that I'm just supposed to do?
Mhm.
Because either way, I put the marble in the trash. It's not more
Right.
valuable to do it one way or the other. And if there's no risk and it always goes in the trash anyway, and both of these stories end the same place with me dead, the fuck's the risk of chasing my dreams?
And brought to you by Mindful Meds. You guys have been seeing me take Mindful Meds for a little while now. Mindful Meds is a premium supplement company dedicated to supplying humans with the tools to improve their mental health, clarity, and performance, all while supporting their growth along the way. Whether it's the Immunity Blend, Lion's Mane, Inspire, or Voyage, all of their products are clean, tested, consistent, and they've become a huge help in my life. I found Mindful Meds over a year ago now, and I've never looked back. Go check out their website, mindfulmeds.io, and use the code BRASS at checkout.
They all end the same way, dead. So between here and now is where I get to write the story. And that's following intention is a really long way to get back to answering your question. But that keeps me focused on what's my intention going forward instead of some expectation of my business needs to grow to be this, or this needs to turn into something else. Like, I'm just going to follow the intention.
Oof. Could you imagine if even a quarter more of our population followed intention?
Like, I think the more and more I look at it, and as much as there's a sounding board and a megaphone trying to reach everyone, being what you talk about is the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone would just worry about their shit, it all works out. You really only have to care about one person's bullshit.
I feel like social media has created the best and the worst in so many different ways. And I think if used as a tool can be the thing that saves humanity, if continued used as a measuring stick or an ego filler, it's going to destroy all of us. I see the people that are taking it and using it as a megaphone in a way that is going to better people. I see it. It's visible. It shows. And that came back to like what I said to you at the very beginning of this. You very much speak the way you speak everywhere else. And I think that's the difference with a lot of people. You can want to be better in your life. You can want to be the accountability guy, the inspiration guy, all of those things. But if you're not showing up 100% every day with that intention set, you're just a fucking talking head on Instagram that's not worth your salt at all. And let's be honest with ourselves. There are those people, and that's okay to say too. But when people are coming to you to learn about you, to grow from you, and not just you, your wife, it sounds like too, you have a whole community. And I want to talk about this community because community, in my opinion, is the thing that will save so many people. They will choose to stick around on the face of our planet if they could understand that community can be the thing they need to lean on instead of just deciding that they can do it all on their own. So talk to me about your community.
So on the importance of community, right? Like if we look at simple what Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we, start at the base of it, that's food, water, shelter. After that, it becomes community, it becomes value, it becomes love. The top of that list is once you get to self-actualization and transcendentalment, whatever, we're trying to skip the middle steps, because of social media and because of these things. And we don't have to know our neighbors anymore for the most part. And most people don't, right? Because like I'm not forced into the people around me.
Right.
But community is still a really, really valuable piece that we're missing. Like there needs to be this accountability in a community. There needs to be leaders. There needs to be, people to be able to communicate with. Because otherwise we've got cities full of people that are just living anonymously. And through that, of course you feel alone. you know, and the more that you're doing just all your communicating online and going virtual with it, it's not the same. I mean, even this, we're having a conversation, and this is as good as we can do technology wise currently. But like, we're not making eye contact. I'm staring at a screen. My camera lens is 2 or 3 inches above where I'm looking at where your eyes are, and vice versa. So we're never quite actually making eye contact in any of this. That's not the same as talking to someone in person. You know, we learned that 99% of communication is done non-verbally anyway. And as we grow to be a more text-based society, of course that we keep separating. Of course we keep disconnecting. Of course we keep living in our own context of how we read those things and become more and more offended. Because when it's verbal or when it's text, I read it in my time and I read it in the mood I'm in. And if I'm someone that's living being attacked, I read everything as an attack. But when you talk to someone, I make eye contact. I can hear the tone of your voice. I know what we spent the last 30 minutes doing and talking about, for what context possibly this sentence came in, and all these things. And if I'm around you and I know that you never would purposely say something to cut into me out of malicious intent, because if you did, we don't have to fucking ever communicate. So if I'm eliminating that, that means there's nothing really for me to get offended by that you could say, right? And so that's part of just the communication thing that we need, in-person communication. The other side of community, I got a really cool exposure to it. In February, I got this really rad opportunity to go to Uganda with a friend of mine, Justin Wren, and work with his charity to create some content about this property that they had turned over to the Batwa Pygmy tribe. This 50 acres with homes and fresh water that they've been working on for the last 5 or 6 years. And I mean, we're talking about people with nothing. I mean, people that are at the peak of their luxury and they're living in a 30 by 10 brick concrete structure without any running water in it, without windows, without electricity, but they do have water within like 200 yards of their house now, right? Yeah, I've never had to think about any of that in my existence. I've had running water since jump. I've had enough clean water access that I get to shit in it. It's fucking crazy how abundant things are. And they celebrated one night we were there as we turned over the land rights. And I listened to this group of 160, 170 people, plus the locals from their area, which walked there, by the way. They partied from sundown at 7 p.m. until when it came back up the next morning, I woke up, there was still music going and people dancing. These people don't have running water. They don't have second sets of clothes. But they're not lacking love and community. And we are. Because when you have community, people feel valued. And that's tough in a virtual world, when you can just shut in and be alone. You know, being seen and being heard and feeling valued and feeling part of a community is huge for what it makes people feel, you know, how they respect their own life. And you've got to choose the people you want to be around. That's the biggest advantage we have now, is you're not stuck around, you know, with the Batwa, right? They're not choosing that community. That's where they're born. But they do have all the love and sense of community and sense of value and purpose because of, well, how simple their lives are. And then in our society, we have such a benefit of it, is find people that mesh with what you want to be around. That's the beauty of the internet thing. The problem is staying in a virtual world with it. You've got to go. You've got to connect. You've got to get exposed to new people. If you just sit around and wait for the people to find you, that's not how any of it works. You've got to create that life. And community is such a big chunk of just, knowing who your brand of weirdos is. And so, you know, I built this weird facility that I've got here in St. Louis. DOPE is what it's referred to, or named as a Division of Performance Enhancement. And I built it for myself and my wife and my team to, you know, have a place to train, have a place to shoot content so that we're not bugging someone else's gym as much as all of the misery that is doing that in a more public setting is. I've done it long enough. I'm not interested anymore. And so having a podcast studio, having this creative space, and at some point we'd never really planned to let civilians in, I guess. And then we threw a Halloween party and had a great time. And we've had the doors open ever since. Basically on Sundays we open the doors 10 to 2 for open gym, sauna, cold. It's free. People come in, hold a conversation, and chat with people and get right for the week ahead. Do something other than disconnect and drink and sit around on the weekend stealing your energy. Go do something that actually refills you. And it's been incredible having opened that and seeing the people that have found it and gravitated toward it and what the community has become.
Community is everything, and we've seen it over and over again, especially in the veteran space and moving outwards into me stepping into more of the coaching and entrepreneurial space. I've seen it work wonders on people who don't have anybody else around, whether it's because they don't live near their family, their service members, they're transitioning out and they're trying to find their new space. It sounds like you're kind of throwing people a lifeline a little with that Sunday activity. And I've seen it with others who do similar things. Eric Hinman does this as well. Him and his wife do that as well with cold and sauna and just exposure and getting people into new things. But I wish others would try harder to create community the way that some people are, because there is groups for everyone. Although I do feel like sometimes it's very cliquey. And if you aren't able to find a solid, safe spot the first time, it can drive people away from trying again.
Look, there's got to be some accountability on the person, right? And part of finding your group is it takes effort. Like you've got to be willing to put yourself out there and show up, and that's why for us, we make it as easy as possible. Doors are open. It's free. Here we are,
right?
Come in. And we've had people show up and not talk to us the whole day. And we've had plenty of people that hang out the whole day, and it's, it is what it is. I get to run a cannabis consumption friendly workout space, and Sundays are lovely. And so
well, we were talking about that before, and I'm glad you brought it up. Let's talk about, because you and I both being athletes going way back, cannabis consumption, any sort of consumption that wasn't legal, although alcohol being allowed to be legal.
Love it.
Oh boy, do we ever love it. Let's just tangent on that for a second, because athletes can drink during training. They can drink when they're active. They can do whatever, and alcohol is fine. Completely fine.
Never thought. Yeah. Totally thought of as normal.
Totally normal. Can abuse the shit out of it. Police officers can go out drinking 12 hours before a shift and get absolutely obliterated and come back to work. And as long as they don't look hungover or like they have alcohol in their systems, they can go grab a gun and go to work.
Do they also, if they have a script for pain, are they allowed to work on prescribed pain meds?
That's a great question. Probably. I would think to an extent there would be an allowance of it.
Look, I'm done believing there's good or bad drugs. There are chemical reactions in my body. It either has a favorable or unfavorable consequences. Choose accordingly. Alcohol, I think it's a really weird one we've backed. I get it. Like over the course of civilization, right? That historically speaking, drinking water is not safe.
Right.
But then drinking alcohol was safe because it's been boiled and fermented in these type of things. And so any of the bacteria is killed. We're just not smart enough yet to understand bacteria or don't have enough of a look in. So we don't get it. But that's why it got back. That's where it starts. And so villages would form around bars or anything else. And throughout history, we've just never went away from it.
Makes too much
depends
money.
on how weird you want to get, right? Like if we want to switch to thinking like stoned ape theory or any of that, but I don't know enough to really make the argument.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go down that path. But my point in saying those things was you've got a plant-based healing modality that is, for the most part, non-addictive. You're not going to overdose on it.
Yeah,
I mean,
psychologically, I would say, arguably.
yeah,
I mean, if people are addicted to cheeseburgers, I think anything's up for debate.
absolutely. And then you've got things like psilocybin, cannabis, ayahuasca, and those are Schedule 1, highly illegal, very dangerous, mind-opening substances that, used in a safe set and setting, can do nothing but create a more open mind, a better functioning person in society, which ultimately helps community and helps everyone else. But those are not backed. So walk me through what it was like for you, someone who was an athlete who could never risk ingesting any of these substances. The first time you sit down with cannabis, I want to know what that was like.
Yeah, so by this point, like 2016, my knee's pretty done. It's the end of the season. And like, I know I'm having surgery, but we're not really getting out of the woods between surgeries anymore. I don't kind of know that's where we're at, but I know I'm now in surgery number 3, and I've had a script of pain meds for the last 6 months. I know this isn't ideal, sustainable based on science and how I feel. I also noticed that the pain meds changed, I guess, how they reacted with me. And at some point, they weren't down regulating me anymore. My body would down regulate, but my brain wouldn't. And I was like, it would just speed up and get more anxious, except I would just lay there like a lump of shit.
What were you on?
Probably Vicodin and Percocet.
Okay.
So I know that's not long-term sustainable for anyone. I mean, there's no one making the argument that, like, take your daily fucking Percocets, microdose your Percocets, everybody. It fucking really makes a great difference. And so I, by this point, I'm not competing in anything anymore. So I don't have any experience like with college and cannabis or doing any of that. I had some friends that smoked, and honestly, I thought they were kind of fucking themselves up. Another story, right? But as I start dabbling in it with edibles, the first thing I realized, like, holy shit, I can sleep. My pain threshold changed, because at that point I'm dealing with chronic pain to where I'm kind of always between a 3 and a 9. And I noticed that I could take edibles and get lower. And I'd also be able to sleep. And when I got a better night's sleep, I wasn't so shitty the next day. And when I wasn't shitty the next day, I'm not mean to my partner. And when I'm not mean to my partner, I'm more interested in doing my rehab. I'm more interested in taking care of the things that help keep me going. However, there's such a part of me that, through programming and going through DARE and everything else in my life, I'm to believe that I don't know how much it is, but there's an amount of this that will ruin my fucking life, and I won't be able to have a job, and I won't be able to be successful, and I'll just become a fucking stuttering Beavis and Butthead moron. And none of that's true. And so having that thing happen and me all of a sudden have the doors blown off of, like, I've been fucking lied to this entire time about this thing. And so if I've been lied to now, then, like, all right, I'm done believing anything you have to say. I'll just have my own experience and make a decision. Like, I'm a traveler anyway. I want to go places. I want to experience it. I want to let it change me. And so I'm already the type of guy that wants to know. I mean, I would say, I don't know what age the first time I would have heard about the idea of magic mushrooms at. But if I'm really honest, I know I wasn't escaping my entire lifetime without knowing. At some point, I'm going to find out what that's about.
Right.
And that's what the next thing I would have been introduced to was psilocybin. And I think probably the first time I took it would have been around, probably 2 grams, 2 or 3 grams, to kind of have a real go at it. And felt an ease of all the anxiety I had. My pain that had been at a 3 was at a 0 for the first time. And I was just surrounded by what I can't describe as anything better than love. And so then that one really was a moment of, like, you motherfuckers. And since then, yeah, I'm interested to give anything a go that's possibly going to help. I mean, that's part of what dope is. That's division of performance enhancement. If it
Right.
enhances performance, I'm open to finding out.
Have you ever sat with any other plant-based medicines?
Oh, yeah. Went down and sat with ayahuasca for 4 nights for New Year's in 2020. My wife and I went down to Costa Rica and sat with that. I've done lots of psilocybin. LSD is not a plant medicine, but a lot of experience in that realm. A little bit of experience with ketamine. Haven't had a chance with combo or anything else, or iboga or anything else further than that world. So cannabis, mushrooms, ayahuasca.
And it seems like to me you use those as tools rather than
Yeah.
just experiences.
Well, look, I think they can be both.
No, of course. I
Um, right.
think there is a subset of individuals, especially in this day and age, who are more of the psychedelic tourism rather
Mhm.
than the tool based.
Traveler.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a way to look at it. No, it's just interesting too, because it seems like after the knee surgery, because of your prior career, there was an identity wrapped around that. There was
Mhm.
a self-worth wrapped around that. So moving that forward, I'd like to know what that kind of was like for you in that process. And it seemed like cannabis was a part of that journey.
For sure, part of that journey. The disentangling of that whole thing, man, I wasn't prepared for it. Um, I remember doing interviews when I'm competing and stuff like that. And look, I love doing the Highland Games, but there's some sense of being in on the joke of like what a fucking silly sport this is already. We're traveling around in kilts throwing rocks in a field, right? Like I'm very fucking aware of the ridiculousness and how rad this thing is. I can't believe it's a thing I get to do anyway. So there isn't a ton of me. I'm very excited and very proud that I got to be best in the world at a thing I cared about a ton. But like Highland Game World Champion wasn't going to be on my tombstone. Like I know that. It's a thing I did and it isn't who I am. And I was really prepared for that the whole time I competed. Look, I mean, I remember high school football ending. I remember collegiate track and field ending. It's coming to an end at some point. What I wasn't prepared for was not being athletic anymore. I wasn't prepared of getting hurt and going from being second best in the world to being like I'm traveling with a cane and don't go up and down stairs and walking more than about 200 or 300 yards a day is it's all I got for you. Like I remember saying no to stuff because I was like, well, how far will we park? And like, fuck, man. Like I'm an experienced person. And now that you've cut my world down to this is what I'm capable of. It has to meet these parameters. It was tough. It was tough. I was really bitter. I was really bummed and I was really shitty and really depressed and not quite sure how to make of any of that because I'd never been in those waters before. The disentangling of all of it, through plant medicine. Psilocybin provided plenty of looks inward, but really one of the big ones was with ayahuasca, and what I got from it was this just complete gratitude that I had ever found something I loved this much that gave back as much as it did for all the effort I put into it. And how dare I ever believe that that was going to be permanent? Be excited that I got 10 years of that. And most people don't even ever know how it feels. I got to look at the loss of my community. I mean, with the Highland Games, there's only 20 guys in the world who are any good at it, like in the pro class. And so if every weekend I'm competing like 20 times a year around the world and there's 12 or 13 athletes, I see the same guys. And these are all other weirdos who are interested in this weird ass sport, who train by themselves and throw in a field by themselves 4 days a week. Like, these are your people. This is the tribe. Like, I don't have to explain weirdness to them or obsession or how lunatic the rest of this shit is. And that's gone.
Right.
And you can get bitter about losing the community, but the community stays with the thing. The community's fluid of those 12 guys that are good in the world. I got to change that perspective. What the plant medicine allowed for me to do on that was really move my set to the abundant, move my mindset to more of an abundance perspective than I was being attacked, and be able to look at how great and how wonderful all these gifts have been, and even in hindsight, this many years down the road, thank you for the injury. Yeah. I'm not here without it. I didn't get that challenge. I didn't get to dive down this road had I not been challenged this much by something in my life. So, I mean, all of it's been a blessing. I mean, that's a big shift in perspective from where I was.
I'd say
also
so.
Really nice that I got out of pain to some degree. I imagine I'm going to have to replace my hip here pretty soon.
Oof, already? Okay.
Look, it's not like it's not a mystery why my body's all fucked up.
No, like, don't get me wrong. I
did all this.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Like, of course, it's not without accountability, but it still sucks regardless. I mean, physical injuries, it's not the surgeries, it's the recovery. It's the stillness.
At this part, after doing the 9, like rehab, I'm good at. Like I can do that. The part that kills me is the stage I'm at right now where, like, I know I need to fix my hip, but I've moved, and so I don't have a surgeon. So I've got to do that. Like, I have to go now shop for this fucking guy to put in my hip.
Right.
And then some part of that is like, he gets to approve. I just fucking hate the whole process. I dislike our medical system with a passion.
Well, I would agree. Both of our medical systems are broken beyond all recognition, to say the very least. But
are you in Canada? Is that where you're?
Yeah, I'm in Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on the West Coast.
I'm familiar. I've been.
Oh, okay. Have you?
Lovely. Yeah.
Oh, it used to be lovely. Let's be honest with ourselves.
I wouldn't have been since like 20, probably 15 or 16.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
So I was competing at Victoria.
Oh, on the island there.
Yeah.
Island's still lovely.
Yeah, so we competed there a bunch of times. Oddly enough, competed there on Victoria Day for like the 25th anniversary of Victoria Day on the island.
Oh, wow.
And Prince Andrew was in attendance of that. Yeah.
The rapist.
At least I'm pretty sure I got to shake that guy's hand, so that's cool,
I guess.
Oh,
no.
He's just Epsteining it up big time, too, at that point. Like,
dude, he was in it, the thick of it.
He's all in it.
Dude, you were touching hands. You're lucky he washed those hands.
That's 1 degree. I have like 2 degrees separation to Epstein. That's great.
Oh, that's not a good thing to be promoting. Oh, God.
No.
But Victoria
what a
is
scumbag, man.
Yeah, that's, there's lines with people. There's levels to discussing human beings in the world, for sure. He's definitely up at the top there.
Yeah, I put people that damage kids right up there.
Yeah, well, I feel like
they should be piled in a fire and set on fire. I'm good with that.
Yeah. The last conversation I had with Andy Stump was very similar. I think he said something along the lines of like, they die slow. I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to ever disagree.
Could we use them like as fuel for something to somehow power like a generator to get the energy from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we take them and we put them in like a setting, way back when, where they would attach the horses and they would walk. Yeah. I mean, I think they still do that in North Korea, but I think we could adopt it here. Okay.
Yeah, not my favorite. I don't know who's on board with the whole pedophilia thing, but
I can tell you who. The Canadian Navy.
Oh, is it?
Let me sidebar attention that. Yeah.
I wasn't aware that was part of their at sea and touching kids. I didn't know that's the motto.
Your face was everything.
Did I miss an inside joke? Is this basically like a military talking shit on each other thing I missed?
No, I'm gonna give you the story. Oh, that might have been one of my best. That's up there with Gage. Oh, okay. So a couple weeks ago, I get these DMs from what used to be one of my old staff members. She was an officer of mine. I can say her name because she's in the book, Mary-Eve Labonte. She's one of the baddest bitches that's ever walked the face of the earth as an artillery gunner for the Canadian Army. Absolute machine. She DMs me. She goes, "This bitch." And I was like, oh, no. And she never says anything like that. And she sends me these messages and these screenshots. And what had happened was there was a Canadian Navy member. She, also very odd, was advocating while in said uniform for MAPS, minor attracted persons.
Oh, see, you say maps, and I immediately go to
Maps, the event that's happening in Denver this week.
the people using psychedelics for
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No.
different group.
Different group.
Got it.
We're tracking here.
Yeah, got it.
The MAPS, minor attracted persons. And basically she was advocating and stating on social media in multiple group chats that 10-year-olds and, you know, children should be, they can consent. They can 100% consent while also representing the Canadian Navy. And part of that problem is you get a lot of trouble for that. And the fact that she thought, yeah, exactly. So me being me, got a hold of it and was like, well, I can't not, damn it. Now I got to make a reel out of this. So I made a reel out of this and it went far and wide, and it went to the Minister of National Defense. So my point in saying that is when you fuck around, you find out. When children are involved, people need to speak up and say something. So I'm not saying that's representative of all of the Canadian Navy, but I do know a lot of people that served alongside that individual who said the very uncomfortable situations that she would be putting people in. And so in saying that, not all of the Navy, just a few.
Sure.
I mean, also,
basically.
Yeah, in the Army, my old major has been charged with sexual assault 7 women. So you're like, this
Look,
is
man,
just
I think
normal. It's
as
normal.
people, if there's 8 billion of us,
oh yeah,
anything you're manufacturing in that bulk has rejects.
Absolutely. 1000%.
Some of those rejects are this.
Some of those rejects should be the people who provide our energy in awkward, uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a real fucking bummer. I mean, the other thing is, I think it's most people don't realize what 18 being consent, right? Like that ain't global.
No, it's
most
not.
of the world fucking has no problem with how fucking weird that is. Not only that, like this hasn't been it's not like this is throughout the entire US for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember, growing up, this has changed drastically even in the last fucking 40 years of my life. France still has a 14 or 13 age of consent.
Yep.
Or no, sorry, France doesn't have one at all, which is
They
why
did.
Roman Polanski's still fucking there.
Ah, yes. But I think, where was it that was 14? One of
Rhode Island, I know, was for a bit.
Yeah. I just can't fathom having that conversation. Like I heard a few people having that conversation recently on someone's podcast, and they were talking about, 20 and 17. Yeah, it looks a little dicey. 18 and 14, not as weird. But once you crush that, hey, I know some.
Not as weird. 18 to 14 is not as fucking weird as 20 to 17.
I think it's disgusting. But because it's still in that teenage age group, it's once you cross that 18-year-old mark for people is where you vote, you go to war, you do X, Y, and Z.
You're allowed to decide if you can fuck.
Exactly. But I still think it should be 18 across the board. And here's the sad part with the generations that are coming. I think it needs to be much older because I feel
Yeah, look, I don't, again, I threw fucking rocks in a field wearing a skirt. So let's make sure my ideas of what should be legal law are represented equally there.
I also think that you are a grown man with a head on his shoulders and opinions are valued regardless.
For sure, right? For sure. I lost my virginity at 15.
Okay.
And I don't remember feeling like when I was 15 that like, holy shit, I'm really young. But like the older I've gotten, the more I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah. What are you doing?
Do you have
just
kids?
Because no, and won't.
Okay.
No kids for me. I'm gonna opt out of that path.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
With all the knowledge and all of the tools to pass down to make the generation better. Not your vibe.
Passing down to other adults.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm cool with it. I'm just wondering. No, because some people,
it's just not for me.
A lot of people, they're fearful of that conversation. They're very fearful of and I see that with the difference between women and men. Most men, if they're like, yeah, I don't want kids, I don't have kids. Nobody presses on them. Like nobody asks them. You ask women, why don't you want kids? You have to have kids. What do you mean? Of course you're gonna have kids. Of course you have to have children.
Yep. Yeah, I was married before, and we spent a pretty good chunk trying to have kids. I wouldn't say I was ever fully into it, but didn't happen. And I thought killed a ton of intimacy in the relationship. Despite that, now on the other side of that and aware that I'm not interested in kids, I don't feel like I should probably compromise on that. So I got a vasectomy a few years ago, very happily. Thing I don't have to worry about anymore. My wife, Bonnie, my current wife, is she's BRCA1 positive for breast cancer, stuff like that. And so she's not interested in having kids and giving the chance of passing that down. And so, perfect.
I think that's a really a very adult decision that most people don't seem to want to make or have that conversation about, because it is, again, very considered unconventional, in my opinion, very responsible.
Yeah. Look, I'm fucking 40. I am not interested in like having kids. I love getting to do what I want to do with my time.
Yeah.
That's what excites me, is spending as much of the rest of my life doing things I'm excited about. I'm aware of the selfishness there. I'm aware of all those things. And look, the other side of it too, as being an experienced person and a traveler that's wanting to learn from everything, I'm also very aware I have opted out of a life experience that would teach me things that I can't quite get anywhere else. Patience and love and unconditional love and understanding a very different perspective on how my parents must have viewed me. I get it. I do. And if I'm going to skip out on that line of all that experience, I'm going full blast toward the other.
Yeah,
I'm going to do the live like a lunatic and travel and be around the world and decide to live in other countries and live as unconventionally as someone without kids should.
So in living a life worth dying for, how does your brand come into play?
It's not dead yet, the brand. So the brand started in 2014 under the name Hate Brain Goods. The hate is something I'd wrote about in my first book. First book was training for the Highland Games, as nothing really had been put out regarding that and kind of how to build a season for it and X, Y, and Z. And so the hate was this thing my brother and I had spoke about and kind of a reference to other athletes that we had seen. And it was your Jerry Rice and these high performers and guys at the world level that, you know, despite these accolades and despite everything they had going, they're still up at 4:30 in the morning going to do the work. And I always describe that as like, you know, when that guy looks at himself in the mirror in the morning, he hates himself more than I do, because I'm willing to let me off the hook a little bit easier than he is. And so that's what it came down to, is like, hate yourself enough to do the work. Like, don't fucking tolerate good enough. And so over time, as that changed, and then with, you know, losing sport, you know, hate, what I realized is like how I get shit done. Like, that's how I show up every day, despite feeling not interested or low motivation or any of that, as if it has any fucking control over the actions I take. The why is because I'm not dead yet. The why I get everything done is because I'm on the fucking clock. I got 1,133 weeks to accomplish everything I've ever wanted to. And so...
Does that give you any sort of sense of anxiety?
Of course.
Do you think that amount of anxiety is healthy?
I don't know. I know it keeps me going. I know it works for me. Yeah, I'm not scared of dying.
Yeah.
Right. And also, like, I'm very, very aware that I don't have like a finite bucket list that I'm going to finish and be done with. But I want to go and do as long as I'm capable of going and doing. You know, I've noticed a couple of experiences, like now the older I've gotten, that like things I would be really interested to do, but I'm aware I may have missed the window on, like enjoying it. So
what are those things?
I love a road trip's my favorite basically thing ever. Living in a van would be phenomenal. I'm sure I would enjoy the shit out of it. I don't know for how long, but I'd like to find out. I'd like to figure out when I go, I'm done with this.
Yeah, I'm over it.
I really wish that like after college, I would have figured out how to spend 6 months in Europe backpacking and going to hostels and exploring other countries and meeting new people and like having my mind blown on what the world is at that age. 40-year-old me is not interested in staying in hostels and dealing with drunk people.
Right.
I think that would have been a very valuable experience, but I've missed the fucking window. I can have a very different trip and rent a van and now drive across Europe very plush. But, you know, the bumming in a hotel the whole time, a hostel, like I just can't.
You're
Like I
bougie
just
now.
can't deal with. No, I'm too fucking old. I go to bed at 9:30. Like none of that's gonna change, and so like I'm the old asshole that's there. I'm the problem, not anyone else. I take accountability for that. Like, old man, you're in the wrong place. Get in your fucking time machine and come back here when you're trying to party.
Oh,
So, you know, again, like looking at this idea of how much I like being nomadic and being on the road. I don't know if 60-year-old me wants to travel this much, but I know I do now. So I'm gonna go and see as much of it as I can. So that's how I use it as fuel. Like, man, every day's on the clock, and like I want to make it count. That's the point of looking at that marble every Monday morning and deciding, was this week well spent, and was it moving toward what I want in my life, or was it stagnant? Was it good enough? Was it phoned in? Be honest with myself about it.
when you're honest with yourself about it, and if you have those weeks where it feels a little phoned in for you, how do you move forward from that?
Well, it would be worth trying to figure out why it was phoned in. You know, why did I? Was I exhausted? Was my energy low? What was stealing my focus? What did I allow to become a distraction? X, Y, and Z. I would try to look at it that way first. But all I can do is try to attack it better the next week. Like, I'm not interested in driving this spaceship forward using the rearview mirror. Like, only thing that is data collection to try again the next week.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's the consistent effort that yields any of it. You know, I think over time, kind of looking at it, right, that I think there's this base self version of us. And the way I would describe that is this version of you that's built based on your experiences, community, where you were born, who your parents were, what their friends were, what type of income your parents had, what their exposure to money was, what their conversations around intimacy were, what your grandparents were like. Did you grow up in the South, or did you grow up in a big city? Like, all of these type of things shape you a ton. And I think we're all pretty okay with that idea. That you didn't choose any of those things. And your base self gets formed out of all of those things, and whether or not you wanted to be more like those things or less like those things. But they're all based on that exposure. You know, most people, I would say, in our country didn't choose their religion after looking at all the available options and make a choice based on what actually works the most for them. It's just because it is. That doesn't work for me. And so if I look at what my best self is, and I'm aware that it's just simply the actions and exposure and the community I'm in and the things that I'm doing every day will shape that. Now I've got to choose it. I've got to be the one choosing to find people that are into X, Y, and Z. I've got to be the one that wants to find these experiences that'll shape me. I've got to look at the books that'll give me information and change my perspective. None of that shit's obligated to find me. The stuff that found me is what I already came pre-installed with.
I like the pre-installed look at religion. That's an interesting one, especially coming from North America. It's very clear why most of us believe what we believe, or see what we see, or expose ourselves to. And it's funny because even though we know that logically, somehow people are made to feel a certain way if they don't believe it.
I think there's a lot of focus put on the idea of right and wrong, or good and bad, and I'm not sure any of those actually exist.
You know, most people don't say that unless they've had some type of plant-based experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's awesome. No, it's good. I guess, and I say that because it illustrates the power of opening the mind and showing that there's so much more that can be exposed and learned, and how you can not only use those things to overcome and get through the weight of maybe the things you were exposed to prior to being able to decide what you wanted to believe or see or eat or do. And I think it's such a powerful tool And when talking to someone like you who takes it and uses those as a way to take action and intention in their life, I think it's good to highlight. You're what I would consider a good example of a responsible human being should be modeling their consumption off of.
I will fucking take that quote to the bank.
Good. Talk to me a little bit though, because community is such a big thing for you, and so you do something that there are a lot of people that are building communities, but there's another action-based portion of this that I want to talk about, which is kind of like your retreats and those things where you get to travel and do this and expose other people. Maybe if they're uncomfortable with going on an adventure on their own, you kind of like softly walk them through it. So talk to me about that.
Well, I get the overwhelming nature of that. Like, I get it. And luckily for me, I'm okay with thrusting myself toward those things, right? Like, I'm aware that I got super fortunate as a weirdo creative that I have this athletic thing. And so all my confidence and all my self-worth, like all of those things came from this athletic side. That's what teaches the discipline. Like, I already have all that installed where the creatives don't get it. And so being able to share that world with creatives has been really important to me, to try to give them a plan and a different perspective of looking at things, because most of them have felt weird and dumb because scholastically it didn't work out that way, and you learn differently, and you're a visual learner instead of anything else, right? We have one education system. It's not my favorite.
No.
It's not learning based, so whatever. But, you know, through all that, getting a chance to expose people to things and give them some freedom to want to dive in and feel safe to explore, like, that's helped a ton. And so we started hosting some retreats last year. My wife does a women's retreat. I do a men's retreat twice a year, and I call it Hard Reset. And it's a really big pattern interrupt. It is coming to St. Louis. It is, I'm going to put everybody up in a house together. I have a chef cook. It's a really closed container to form some intimacy and form some bond. And we're going to train together, and we're going to hot and cold and dive into some breath work and getting people to buy all in, right? I'm doing this experience with you. I want to show you the things that I would have written off as kooky bullshit. Not all of it, because journaling is still rad. So is also me getting a chance to, like, well, journaling falls more kooky bullshit, but like the journaling I got from training, I kept a training journal. And at some point I wrote down how I felt about training that day, and being able to look at that evidence over time allows me to have an honest communication with myself that removes judgment or anything. Like, I don't have an emotional feeling because I missed my 4th rep. I can look back at why. And I treat the journal for my life and my self-discovery the same way. It's just an honest communication to have with me. And so being able to expose to that, we do some boxing, we do some jujitsu in a way that you can have something to take with you to go forward. Because despite what I've found out that most males think they can defend themselves, they can't. It's fucking pathetic. Okay, self-included.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking happily self-included. But that's the truth of it. Like, why live behind that fear instead of go fucking learn how to do a thing? Go develop a skill. Go out there and let your fragile little ego say, I don't know how to do this because no one ever taught me. But thinking you're supposed to know how to do all these things from jump, or that like becoming a carpenter is a talent instead of a skill to learn, a craft. You know, it takes repetition. It takes time. It takes getting beaten. But we don't teach any of that. We don't teach delayed gratification. We don't teach what long-term work brings. People want it now and they want it done. And so in this retreat, man, it's intense. It's 72 hours and it's deep work, and we're going to dive into stuff and you're going to be tired. And by the time we get through the end of the weekend, you are not the same. And I've seen it change in everyone that's come through it. Now, the people that manage to integrate it on the background do tons. And then some people are tourists. And they get the dip, and then it goes back to the way things were, and then they go into another retreat. And you end up being that your new thing. That your identity is going to retreats. instead of actually taking any of the fucking information you learned and applying it to your life. Like, that's why I'm not that interested in listening to people's fucking psychedelic trips. Yeah, I want to know what you changed in your life because of it, not what fucking magic you saw.
That is rare as hell, though.
Yep.
Not a
So
lot
is
of people
awareness.
say, yeah, but not a lot of people will say what you just said, you know, the chasing the retreats, the this, the that. There is a part of that does happen in this space.
Well, but it's like trying to fucking learn awareness phonetically,
Ah,
right? Like, instead of actually being able to speak the language of awareness or being fluent in awareness. I can go to retreats, and because I go to, you know, it's essentially the like, you know, I take medicine because I'm sick. So if I don't take medicine, I'm not sick type of idea. You know, if I go to retreats that are doing these healthy things, look at how healthy I am. Meanwhile, you're not doing any of the fucking work.
right. A lot of people think that the work happens at the retreat, but it doesn't. It's the experience. The work stops. The work starts when you leave that retreat.
Most of these retreats, and I'm sure you've attended stuff similar, like, they're not giving you anything. They're exposing you. And because you're not being given anything, you can do this anywhere. Now, is the energy amplified when you're in the right set and setting? Of course it is. So is competition. So is anything else. But you can do the work anywhere. I can train anywhere. Is it better in a room full of people who give a shit? Of course it is. But using the retreats as the only fill up or as the drug, which is what people end up doing, you're not integrating. And if you're not integrating, it doesn't fucking work.
That's something that is being underlooked. Integration. Oh my God, integration. So many fucking people in our space go, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to fix my problems. They come back and they're like, I'm fine. I don't need, you know, I learned everything I need to learn. Well, you didn't, because obviously you didn't, because you're not doing anything about it. You're not showing that. I'm not talking about Instagram, but you're not showing it in your daily life and your daily practice and the way you move, the way you sleep, the way you eat, the way you look at. And you can see that in your behavior. But nobody wants to hear that. Everybody wants to just keep going, do more. It's not about doing more. You're missing the point. It's really sad and really quite frustrating too, especially in this space, because it is one thing to go sit with medicine and it's one thing to prepare for it. It is another to use what you've learned.
Like, there's plenty of people that are going to go do ayahuasca or mushrooms or combo or any of this shit because they're collecting merit badges.
100%.
I'm not into it.
And nor should you be.
You know, outside of wearing a mala, I'm not dressed in drug rugs all day, making sure that I'm walking around as a walking billboard for kookiness. You know, it doesn't have to go that way either.
You wear it because your wife made it.
Well, I wear it also because I like it. I like
It's
the reminder
nice.
it gives me, right? Like, I know that if I get really frustrated and really spun up and start spiraling and doing the whole wonderful thing that is entrepreneurship, try to make it around with gratitude and not feel better. Per bead. Good luck.
That's why we use beads.
I got them.
They slow it down. They slow it down.
My beads are, you know, I acquired them at places that I like to remember.
Absolutely. There's something about touch, connection, items to things. I know you mentioned before, you know, all the kooky things, but I'm a big fan of journaling. And it didn't work for me initially until I started to understand what I was trying to accomplish and then utilize that as the tool. But in saying that, when I sit with medicine or I'm journaling or I'm somewhere where I am writing, I take something, whether it's a leaf, a stick, a flower, a piece of grass, whatever you want, whatever I can take that's small enough to go in between the pages of the page I just wrote. It's a tactile reminder. It's a touch thing.
I dig that.
It just,
well, it's grounding to some sort, right? Like, it brings back to present. It's a moment to get out of just this mental state. You know, I've noticed me, you know, using different tools like cold plunging or sauna or anything else. You know, as an entrepreneur, it's really easy to just get spun up and operate in headspace all day. And like, time operates different there, kind of the way dreams are really fucking fast. And you can think like, I'll never have time to get any of this shit done. And the next thing, once you actually get through your list, like, oh, that took 45 minutes. And I put off my whole day for it.
Exactly.
I've been dodging this all day as this giant monumental thing, and I'm done in fucking 45 minutes. I'm aware. I do the same thing. None of this is new. Welcome. We're all the same. But being able to switch to being in the physical space, like getting to train or jump on the treadmill or run a little bit or get outside, go for a walk, like all of that gets to shift the focus back out. Like put the energy back on the physical, get present, and then go back and attack your problem.
Yeah. And that's something I try to remind people when staying in the body, when making decisions. You can't make decisions in the static mind. It's just not going to happen. It's just wires trying to connect and smash against each other. You need to be present. And so one of the tools I use, and I don't know if you've ever done this, I take meetings on the phone when I'm walking.
Mm-hmm.
I move. I'm a mover, or I'm outside in the grass.
Like I consider the gym here, to be really honest, it's just a fidget spinner.
Oh, 100%.
That's really all the gym is for me at this point. I mean, I'd love to stay as healthy as humanly possible, but it's not like I'm in there trying to get stronger anymore. Per se.
It's a tool for, I love that, using those tools for entrepreneurship, because I don't think enough people discuss physical movement with not just mindset, but maybe making decisions or pulling apart information. And I think it's super, super useful. And I encourage people to try it. I know, like when I'm trying to digest, that was going to be one of my next things I want to talk to you about. Is like people like us listen to certain other people. They're the ones that uplift us, inspire us, motivate us, and drive us forward. And in saying that, I listen to all of those things while I'm moving, because I absorb information at a very high rate, and it's podcasts. So if you as a person were to listen to a podcast, if you were trying to figure out an idea, come up with something, brainstorm, what is the go-to person or show that you listen to that you find helps break some things down for you?
Like everyone else in my age group, I enjoy Rogan. I won't pretend like I'm not into it. I am and have been a really long time.
Do people pretend
I would assume that there's got to be some part of people that feels like it's cliche to now say.
I think that's silly, and I think that's just their egos.
Perfect.
He's great. Move on.
I think he's great. I also think he's got such a wide variety of interest that depending on guest is depending on if I want to listen to it.
100%.
I will listen to Aubrey Marcus on a pretty regular basis. Been lucky enough to call that guy a friend and close enough to be able to fully know that he's about that fucking life. That he's not a walking, that he walks the walk. And so I'm always excited to hear what he has in mind. I end up finding a lot of inspiration. Like, I like audiobooks more than I'll go to podcasts anymore. And audiobooks have been really good. Lion Tamer's Guide to Life is a really great one. I picked up, all the standard stuff, 4 agreements. The 5th agreement I just picked up. I'm reading The Art of Impossible currently, and I'm reading Out of Your Mind by Alan Watts. So, I tend to find inspiration and creativity for problem solving through new ideas. So kind of getting out of my problem and letting things work through. So I've become really good at like a morning routine and kind of have dialed it in. So my morning routine is I try to stay away from my phone for like the first 2 hours I'm awake, other than what minimal needs to be done. Was there an emergency? There's not, but I'm not doom scrolling. I get to the gym and I get on the treadmill or the bike, and I try to do about an hour of cardio watching something new, whether that's a podcast or whether that is a documentary, something new and inspiring. I was watching today the one on the creation of Tony Hawk Pro Skater video game, talking to Tony Hawk, and it's great. Like hearing that dude bet on himself, man. Like the piece that I remember getting stoked on was, right before the video game comes out, and this is a big dice roll. Like Neversoft offers him $500,000 to buy out his rights to any of the next games. And at this point, like skateboarding's doing okay. It's not great. And he's doing okay, but he bets on himself. He bets on himself and he says, no, I want to stay involved in everything. And I want the royalties based on how well it sells. And then like 2 weeks later at the X Games, he lands the first 900 and blows the fucking doors off of skateboarding. He's then like a character on The Simpsons. He's then all these things. Like Tony Hawk becomes gigantic and this thing takes off and sells over $1 billion in stuff. Now, I'm inspired by people that trust them. Like, fuck waiting for it to find you. Yeah, I bet on me. And so hearing that and hearing different problem solves and different, you know, how they get through things always inspires me. And so that's what I like doing during that time. I find my best ability to learn is kind of why my heart rate's sitting around 130 beats a minute.
Yeah, there's something special there.
Yeah, and then by that point of that hour's up, my ADHD is kicked into full effect and I need to do a different thing. So I make my way to the sauna and I usually will listen to an audiobook while I'm in the sauna and I journal while I'm in there. I usually have something that'll come up while I'm watching the first documentary or something that like I'm itching to get out of my head. A concept or an idea or something new to think on or noodle around with. And then I wrap up with 3 minutes in the cold plunge and roll on with the day, hit some breath work and call it.
What's your degrees for your cold plunge?
Mine stays about 45. I mean, look, amazing. This is another.
Yeah, I know. Give it to me. Give it to me.
It's not a fucking max effort exercise. One, water doesn't get any fucking colder than 32, you bunch of weirdos. That's it. 32 fucking degrees. Otherwise, it's a solid unless it's salt water. I get it. It's a couple degrees different, but it's not a fucking max effort thing. The point of it isn't freezing to death and fighting off hypothermia and being able to fucking kick yourself completely into fight or flight system and drain yourself of all of its adrenaline and everything else. The point is down regulation. The point is being able to focus. The point is being able to shift from parasympathetic nervous system into the sympathetic nervous system by a mechanical fucking switch so that I can sleep at night. It takes 3 fucking minutes to get all the best parts of this. Sitting in there for 8 to measure your dick against some other fucking guy who's sitting in cold isn't useful. I don't fucking understand why we operate that way.
Get it? Oh.
So, yeah, cold. I do it for 3 minutes and I move on with my fucking day at 45 degrees.
My face hurts from laughing and smiling so hard. God, this has been the
Look,
best
you know,
episode.
so I had an interesting realization, plant medicine recently.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was on this motorcycle trip, so I got to do some work last year with Indian Motorcycles, kind of got to travel host a show for them that will be airing on my YouTube channel pretty soon. And so I've got access to motorcycles. So as long as I show up in Costa Mesa, California, I can borrow a bike. And so me and a friend went, borrowed bikes, and I didn't really have any plans of where we would go. Stayed with a friend in LA for a day or two, and then made our way up to across the Golden Gate Bridge, and then into Yosemite, and found campsites basically every night and slept in a hammock and weird parks and anywhere else. On the last night of that trip at camp, I knew that I was going to jump into some mushrooms. And so went ahead and did that. And I had an interesting takeaway from it. And like once I felt things start really ramping up, because me and my buddy were having a good time shooting the shit and enjoying all the beauty that is mushrooms, giggling and laughing and watching the leaves. But as it started ramping up, I was like, oh, cool. I'm gonna go get my hammock, close things up and see where this wants to go. Like, let's do some work. Right. And there is some part of me that unless that trip gets ugly and unless it digs something out of me that's painful, like I don't find it as valuable. Mm-hmm. So there's something interesting there that like, I'm aware there's some part of me that's looking for that to be able to share instead of like, oh, it was just great. It can just be great. I don't have to find some weird hidden trauma I didn't know about. Again, we're not competing in a fucking trauma contest. This isn't the trauma Olympics. This isn't the pain Olympics of who had the fucking scariest trip. And so having the ability to just be like, hey, man, not everything beneficial for you has to fucking feel like you're getting gutted. So it was a nice thing to catch. We'll see how well I manage to keep it in sight.
I'm excited to see how this one goes.
Yeah. It feels good to know it though. Because I can catch myself knowing like, yeah, I should probably check in with medicine and see how things are going. Maybe take a chance to process the last couple months if it's been heavy and, or just busy. Just check in.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that realm, I don't lie to me very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can find myself putting it off. Like, oh man, it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna, whatever this feeling is. And like, fuck, it's never been. I've had like one uncomfortable experience and it was totally my fault based on set and setting. I mean, I've had plenty of uncomfortable things, but I've never finished an experience and been like, that was terrible, I'm not interested. It's always like, why aren't we doing this more often to touch base? It's like, I always think it takes longer than it does. Like, it's just for like fucking 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like, I always think that like, I don't have time. And then the next day I'll be down and all this. Ugh, I just make up excuses like anyone else.
We all do, but you catch yourself in them. That's the difference. That's the learning. That's the lessons.
The accountability, right? Like that's it. Like that's the accountability. That's the noticing the habits that I have that I don't like, doing something about them. Because some of those are flinches. I know one of the ways my dad reacted to stress or problems is just anger. Anger immediately, and then it would lash out. And I know that that's in me. Like that is my base reaction to unplanned stress. It is freak out, clam up. The answer is no fucking way. And then try to personally attack anyone who would try to have me do said thing. And so if I can catch that pattern, right, I can catch it starting to spin up and just be able to have the awareness of like, you're doing it. You're doing it. Stop. And I can put the brakes on it. It's never something I think that I'm going to get to the point of where the feeling doesn't show up anymore. So the way I've kind of like figured out a metaphor for it is watching skateboarders get really good, or BMX riders or any of this, what they get really good at is falling. Right. And so they get this intuition that a fall is going to come earlier and earlier and earlier so they can bail safer to try again. It's not anti-falling. Falling's part of the game. Falling is part of getting better at anything. But the repetitions allow you to have more intuition of when a fall is coming. So being able to be aware of this spiraling up or whatever it is, this anxiety or anything else, like the skateboarder, I can catch it earlier on so that I can bail sooner and get back on the work to re-get myself sorted instead of let this thing spread to the people around me and then have to go through this whole fucking thing of, I'm sorry, I was a dick. I got stressed out and I acted like a fucking baby, because babies do that. Babies aren't in control of their shit. Babies let their feelings decide what comes out of their mouth. And so the better you get at it and the better you see skateboarders get at it, right? They're not even bailing on the trick anymore. They start bailing on the run up because they're so intuitive that they can feel that on the run up, like, we're going the wrong path. So it's through the repetition and awareness of being able to say like, fuck, I did that thing today. And it's not about the elimination of it. It's about minimizing it. So that helps me a ton.
Damn, son. I feel like I just like drained you of all of your tools and all of your lessons and all of your pertinent information and somehow got you angry at the same time at cold water.
No.
How dare I?
How dare.
How
cold
dare
water.
It triggered the shit out of you there, Holmes.
I find people a very fascinating species. You know,
they are.
We're like every individual person is relatively easy to deal with. People as a whole in mass become very complicated. People are really unpredictable and wildly dangerous. A person is pretty easy to deal with. You can communicate and like maybe have a discussion and not get offended. People, the current sensibilities in my country aren't my favorite. I try to live differently.
I think it's not just your country, so don't feel alone.
Sure.
Don't feel alone. You're not the only one in that state, in that feeling of how things are around you. That's pretty widespread, but I think there is a shift happening on some level. I do feel the pendulum swinging back in a way. I do feel those waking up, if you will, if you want to use that terminology. And so I'm hopeful and optimistic that hopefully all of the way that people view things and run their mouths on the internet and the way that they decide to live their lives, I'm hoping for a shift. But there's always going to be a subset of individuals who are not.
Well,
there's always going to.
We have such a shit idea of time, like just as a species. Because like 50 years equals basically forever for us, which is such a laughable thing. Mm-hmm. The idea of what is currently permanent, right? I mean, if we go back only 200 years, even the borders of our states look real fucking fluid if you put that 200 years on like a 10-second time lapse. So we're dealing with a lot of stuff that we just don't have reference points for or tools for. The amount of information that we have exposed to ourselves right now, never, ever planned for this. Like, I don't know that our brains were ever adapted to be ready for it. We're in it. I also don't think it kills us, like as a species. I don't think we go extinct because of the internet. So the only other side of that means at some point we kind of learn to deal with it better. And as things further get regulated, right? Like those of us who were early adopters of social media and whatever that means, like, yo, this shit was the Wild West. But that time's done. It's different now. Like this thing that you and I currently do for a living is now an option for people to do for a living. This wasn't when I started doing things. And we don't have people that have lived like entire careers this way yet. We don't have people who have lived and died their entire life with the internet, much less like my grandparents were that generation. Like we're pretty good at cars now, but in 1920, they were scared anything went over 440 miles an hour would kill you. You would just die from the speed.
Maybe not
like
the
your
Kia
fucking
right now,
body
though.
Would get ripped apart. Do what?
Maybe not Kia right now. Did you see that?
No, what did they do?
Apparently they've got a massive 500,000 car recall where they're like, cars are spontaneously catching on fire. Please park outside.
Fuck. Speaking of that, that's a thing that in the earlier turn of the century, we thought people kind of spontaneously combusted. That's a fucking idea that people thought.
And they believed it.
They just dropped cigarettes and burned themselves alive because they're hammered. We thought for a while that there were people that were like, sometimes, people just burst into fucking flames. That's not that long ago that we thought that.
Oh,
that's not caveman shit.
I know.
Like we had air conditioning and people thought that. You know what I'm saying? Like we're fucking pretty advanced for people to be like, sometimes people burst into flames. You don't think that maybe we'd had some notes on that from like the Egyptians or something, like as a heads up?
The saddest part about that statement is that you automatically, instinctively, without thought, immediately did a Southern accent.
Oh, no. I'm from Louisiana, so it makes it not cultural appropriation, if I'm pretty sure.
Oh, my face. Oh, my goodness. It's true. People believe a lot of shit from not that far ago. And that's also what makes me optimistic about the future, is that not that long ago, people thought people just, boop, that was it, fire. It was all of a sudden a weird Avengers movie and people just burst into flames as if that was a thing. So my hope is that with in saying that you are going to see a shift. You're going to see this idea, but I still think there's going to be a subset of it, people that for the rest of their lives are still going to believe that people burst into flames.
Yeah, of course. Look, again, back to with 8 billion people, right? Like, if you got a room for 100 people, there's a chance that there's 2 morons in there that aren't interested in fucking learning, that will argue with the wall. They're just fucking morons. And they're happy to be morons. You can't fix them. They don't want to be fixed. They're just fucking dumb. And that's out of 100. And when you have 8 billion, there's a shitload. And you have people on one end of the chart that realize they can manipulate morons. And so they will. Because as long as people are willing to be led, someone's more than happy to take the fucking reins.
I can just see the thoughts toying in your head right now. What did you say?
As neutrally political as I can say everything.
What did you say to me at the very beginning of this about it being virtual, but yet most of the conversation is visual, is your physical reaction? If you're not watching this, people, you're doing yourself a massive disservice.
Oh, man.
That's all I'm saying, man. That's all I'm saying. Look, I just, in a world full of morons, I appreciate you standing out, and I appreciate the accountability, the willingness to do the work, growing from your own shit and helping others move through theirs, rather than just leaving the morons to themselves to bang their head against the wall. You're doing your best to take those morons and turn them into functioning, healthy, useful parts of society and making them be an asset and no longer a liability. So I can appreciate that. And I can appreciate the work that goes into that.
Yeah, I want to work with anyone who's as interested in their life being awesome as I am in mine. But I'm not interested in convincing you to fucking live a rad life. I don't give a shit whether or not you do. I'd love for you to, but I'm not going to spend any of my energy convincing you at how fucking cool it could be.
It's not, it's true. It doesn't feel like it's a difficult thing to do. It doesn't feel like it's a difficult thing to have to show others. But unfortunately, we live in a day and age where people believe that they are not worth, or they do not deserve a life worth dying for. They don't believe they're worth being healthy. They don't believe that they should love themselves. They don't believe that they should be in the rooms they're in. That is the reality. We've created a generation of people who think that they are less than because they don't match up to Kylie Jenner on Instagram. Like that's the truth.
Fucking Kylie Jenner. Right on. I think, again, fascinating species.
I love it, man.
I don't understand why that gets our attention. Like, I mean, if the internet has taught us anything, it is that more of our attention will go to a negative thing than something we like, whether that is comments or whether that's trolls or anything else. And if we're showing the world in a data collectible sense that we'll spend more time looking at things that aggravate us than things that make us happy, why do you think the advertisers wouldn't play into this? Like, why wouldn't any of the media sources play into this? Their job is to keep you looking, not inform you. The job is to get you to watch the ad, not give you information. These are two very different fucking strategies. They're not an unbiased opinion there to give you knowledge. If they found out, they would have longer viewership. Like there's not an altruistic view of why they're sharing news on a media channel, right? Like, if the job is to keep you watching longer, that's called entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, know that that's everyone you're dealing with. Like, just know that that's the game before you watch it. And they would happily all air a blue screen with static and a screaming baby if it provided more views than what they're currently airing. They air this because we watch it. If we stop watching it, they change. This is our fault. The other thing that's our fault politically, they lie to us. Why? Because we told them we're too fucking stupid to handle the truth whenever you tell us, because we'll panic. Look at toilet paper.
Right? It was a brilliant experiment.
Right. And so past that, right? Like then my government says, you know, whatever with masks that you need masks, and then later tell me, or sorry, that you don't need them. And then later tell me you do. And we know that, but we need them to get the first responders and people first. And no, that's a virtuous reason to lie to me. But you lied to me. And the reason you lied to me is because you think I'm too fucking stupid to handle the information correctly, which we've proven we are. So why would they tell us the truth? This is our fault.
How do you think we correct that?
We all have to be accountable instead of being a victim. I mean, otherwise, the reality of like the longer thing of this situation is, let's say there is something catastrophic in the works, right? Like, let's say we know that a comet is going to hit Los Angeles in 5 days. No one's warned about that.
Oh, God, no.
You don't warn anyone, because warning creates a problem on the front end, and then you have devastation, and then you have cleanup. It's really expensive because the front end's expensive. Whereas otherwise, you just have devastation and cleanup. You've eliminated a third of the expenses. Like, it's a fucking accounting decision that they'll make. It's cheaper. The same way we run our schools and education system. We do it this way because it's cheaper.
You can't keep
That's
saying
why we
things.
have the food that we have available, is because
bait
it's the
me.
cheapest.
You're going to drive me into like a 20-minute tangent if you continue down this path. And I don't know that you're ready to go down there, because in Canada, we're not only there, we're about 12 to 18 months ahead of you in a lot of the shit that is rolling downhill. Everyone forgets that we're your hat and we're on fire.
Yeah, it's great. We're doing super. Look, every empire just, falls at some point.
We fell a long time ago. I think the timeline was 2013 when Beijing started interfering with our elections. So that was fun.
I don't know where I would put the finger on the U.S., but I don't know, somewhere between the rest of my country thinking octogenarians are the best bet for fucking running the show.
America is a really fascinating place for me. A lot of my business is in America. A lot of what I do, organizations, people, blah, 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 is in America.
Opportunity? Nowhere's better.
Yeah, and everyone says there is none there. And that's another thing that blows my mind. Because
great. Keep fucking believing it, everybody.
I know,
There's
right?
Plenty.
We'll take it all for you.
That's a scarce resource.
Yeah, that's
Jesus
still the
Christ.
conversation. I know. And so when you come down from here to America, I get an outside view on a lot of things in the United States, in which most people don't pay attention to, catch on, or are aware of, is that, like I said, we're ahead of you on a lot of these bills that you guys are implementing. We've already done it. We're screaming up here, but do you know why you're not hearing it? Bill C-11. We have an iron curtain. Yours is called the TikTok bill. So you guys are down and going down the same path. You just haven't solidified yet into it. We teach SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identification, to kindergartners to grade 12. We've been doing it since 2018, but you don't hear about it. We currently set fires across Canada to make it look like we need everyone's help, and then put out our firefighters and say they can't work, but we need everyone else to come help. But our firefighters are not allowed to do their job in the country. Like, shit happens. It's all happening. People don't pay attention, because if you pay attention to this, some people it will break, or they will drive inflation so high that you can't focus on anything but putting food on the table of your family and going to work to make sure that your unit is safe. They don't allow you to have capacity to think outside of these problems.
That's the whole education system, right? Like, it's all mirrored off of fucking Henry Ford.
Absolutely.
Bless on Henry Ford for creating the assembly line and figuring out which America, or Western culture for that matter, prays to the fucking god of capitalism. We are here to maximize fucking profits. That is goal number one, including on people. This is why the education system is built to play to the middle. We are teaching basic fucking skills. And as soon as you get the chance to go for higher education, I will lend you money to go educate yourself. Because what I'm banking on, since you can't ever default on it, is you will enter the labor force. I don't care if you found a thing you're into or not. I want you going to get a fucking job. Because now you're producing things, you're paying taxes. And as soon as that's comfortable, I'd like to hand you more money to buy a house. Because don't you deserve it? And now we got you forever. Put off those fucking dreams and keep fucking swinging.
I'm hopeful enough people listen to this episode to really hear how you don't have to do and live a life that you just illustrated.
You don't have to do anything.
I think people think they do, though. That's part of the problem.
Well, so we're going back to what I talked about, right? Like, I don't believe good or bad. I don't believe right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that there's actions and consequences for my actions, and those are either favorable or unfavorable. That's it, depending on what my goals are. But like, have to do a thing? Like, the beauty of realizing you don't have to do shit is that everything I'm doing is my choice. And whether you want to believe it is or not doesn't change the fact that it is. Everything you're doing is your choice anyway. Nobody issued you that job you hate. We don't operate in a society that does that. That job you hate, you found that. You got yourself there. And whether that was because you created debt and you fell in line and did all the things, those choices. And it's choices that get you out of it. And you can either decide to start making some toward where you want to go, or double down and lock in because, God, I've already invested 5 years into this job I already hate. I'll get, with 35, I'll have time to do the thing I want. Not for me, man. I got no problem in hitting the detonate button if things ain't good.
What is happening next with you and Not Dead Yet?
We put out new apparel pretty regular. Like, I like making stuff. So we drop something relatively new, probably 3 or 4 weeks out of the month. Mentorship group. We've got a retreat for our hard reset retreat in October. It's October 20th through 23rd. I think I've got a speaking thing in February. I imagine I'll probably go try to be part of another event in the meantime. Probably do something with Fit for Service or something like that. I'd like to attend again.
I like that.
All in all, that's kind of what's going on. I know I've got some travel. We talked about that a little bit and I glossed over it. We offer some international trips with people. We work with a company, Trova Trip. And I know for me, like, how big of an experience getting to see the world and other cultures has been. And I also understand how fucking wildly intimidating it is to decide to book your own flight to somewhere like Iceland. You don't know where to go. There's tons of stuff around it. Like, I got lucky enough the first time I went was to compete, so I'm taken care of. But as I've been now a lot of times, like, I know how important that travel is and that exposure. So, we build these itineraries that we're interested in, and they've varied everything from kind of posh luxury feel on, trips to Iceland to we slept in tents for 5 nights in Alaska and got snowed on. So, I mean, I like doing both. Both my wife and I are into both styles of it. And I think this gives people this opportunity to come and be part of an experience and not let any of the stress of I have to figure out what all we're doing to be part of it. And for me as well, like, I'm not hosting this. I'm not there like, guys, see you at 7.
Yeah.
Like, we have a host. I'm on a trip with you.
That's cool, man.
So,
I like that.
All the stuff we offer. Yeah. So notdeadyet.com and indylife.com or notdeadyetlife.com.
And then you put out a ton of stuff on your social media. I find those clips incredibly useful. I think they're fantastic how you do them. And if you're looking for bits of information that you haven't, you're trying to dive into who this guy is and really just kind of learn, I think it's a really good representation of you. And I think it puts your best foot forward in terms of what you bring to society and those around you.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. It feels very aligned with who I am currently. I don't think it has the most engagement from the audience I've built as an athlete, but oh well.
You'll find your tribe. You always will. That's how it works.
I'll concern myself
right?
with the people who raise their hand that are interested and not with those who don't.
I love that, man. I wish more people thought that way. And I wish sometimes I even thought that way. My God.
Same. I'm saying that out loud for myself plenty too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a rough one. All right, my friend. I think that's it for this one. I'm looking forward to having you back on. I've already got a very solid list of topics, questions. Maybe it'll be a Patreon only episode because I feel like might get pulled on YouTube, homie. But can you give everyone your social? You said the website, but your social, we'll put it in the bio as well.
Is Matthew P. Vincent, and then Not Dead Yet _brand, Not Dead Yet _life. And then my podcast is the Not Dead Yet podcast.
which I highly recommend. It is one that you should be listening to on a regular basis. Like I said, go check him out. We'll put everything in the show notes. You stick with me. Everyone else, we'll see y'all next week.